Welcome back to the Football Fitness Federation podcast. This is a bonus episode because look who's back. It's Jordan Tyrer. How
How
are you,
are we? How
Jordan?
are we? I'm good. I'm very good. Yeah, it's been a very, very busy few weeks, hence why I've been a little bit absent off the podcast, but it's been a very productive, well, I'll say a few weeks, more like a month actually. So yeah, very good to be back.
Now, you've been to the Caribbean. Have you had your feet up? Have you actually been doing a bit of graft?
I've been grafted for sure. Yeah, I've been absolutely grafted for sure. Straight into the Caribbean off the back of off season, which was no rest for the wicked. We had a great off season in terms of our camps and things with the physical performance hub down here on the south coast. 6 weeks worth of off season camps, which anyone who's ran camps will know that's a shift.
Yeah.
Me and Sam Chapman, who our lead coach, we were definitely knackered. We finished our final one on the and we just said to each other, we were like, that was a shift. But it was insane. It was really good. 14 separate players across all weeks. Some players doing all 5 and 6 weeks of them really. So yeah, really, really beneficial for the players, for us, and just a really good vibe to have players from all walks of life, different levels, ages, male players, female players, all playing together and just for the added benefit of just trying to get better and ready for pre-season really, and a lot of fun, a lot of smiles. The weather was atrocious for the first like 3-4 weeks. Like I was coaching in the middle of June in a big coat because it was so wet and horrible. When you're thinking, now I know why everyone goes off and does abroad off-season camps. Um, but when the weather was good and the sun did shine, it was brilliant. We had literally gym set up under like a big marquee right next to the pitch, so we would go between and we do sort of prehab work out on the pitch, speed based work, axle diesel, whatever it was on the day and the theme, and then little sort of rehydration, little protein break with brilliant food supplied to us from the Good Prep sponsors and who we are obviously big fans of. That was amazing. It went down really, really well with the players. They loved it. And then we do the gym work as well on the side of the pitch in the sunshine when the sun did shine. And that was great. So straight off the back of that into the Caribbean. But I won't say I'll leave the suspense there. There we go. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, and this is obviously why we wanted to jump on the podcast because you've literally just got back from the trip over there. But give a little bit of context first in terms of how this came about and what you're actually going to do and where you've been as well.
Yeah, so amazing sort of opportunity, and a big thank you to Ben Bradley really because it came through him and a fellow called Dan Neville who runs a company called Champion Academy down here on the south coast. So Dan knows Ben. Dan has links with the Caribbean, and asked Ben if he wanted to go and deliver a C license in strength and conditioning in the Caribbean. Um, Unfortunately, because of the dates and falling on sort of into pre-season, that start of pre-season, end of June, into July sort of time. Ben obviously couldn't do it because he's at Bournemouth, and that's obviously pre-season time, isn't it? And one of our most important times of the year. So Ben obviously said to myself, not being attached full time to Bournemouth or a club, said, "Would you be able to do it?" Yes, I was able to do it, and off we went. So the country itself was Anguilla, which if no one has ever heard of it before, which a lot of Brits haven't, to the amazement of Anguillans, because Anguilla is technically it's a British territory in the Caribbean. Very small island, only population of 15,000 people, but a literal paradise. A literal paradise. It's something out of the brochures sort of thing. And only on the final morning, just before I was leaving, did I actually get to explore some of the beaches and stuff. It was that full on, but I got there and it was just like wow. A lot of the big NBA stars and everyone go holiday in there, and yeah, a very amazing tourism hotspot. But aside from the tourism, um, really trying to push, really trying to push their football. And the Caribbean as a whole are really trying to push it on. So the opportunity was to, yeah, like I said, run a C license in strength and conditioning, um, for not only Anguillans through the Anguillan FA, but also for coaches from the other islands in the Caribbean as well. So we had, a good chunk of Anguillans on the course, but we had, I think, 23 signed up for it. which is pretty groundbreaking. There's nothing like this in terms of in the area anyway. The week before they ran a goalkeeping course as well, which had a good sign up, but not as many as the strength and conditioning. So yeah, you had people from St. Kitts, I think of some Grenada, I think a few other, St. Lucia, a few other islands as well that were on the course, and really varied background as well. So you had people who sort of had an education in physical education and sort of sports science and stuff. You then just had a lot of people who were just sort of coaches. You had a few sort of athletics coaches because obviously in the Caribbean, track and field is massive. So you had people from sort of that background, but also then just worked with footballers. And then you had sort of sports therapists and a few sort of sports medicine backgrounds as well, all trying to upskill on strength and conditioning because they'd had nothing like it before. So it was a real sort of novel approach from Anguilla to really upskill and really push sort of the strength and conditioning aspect into Caribbean football, which hats off to them. You know, it is quite bold because there's nothing like that for them at the minute. And obviously in islands where there's such small populations, you'd prioritize other things typically. But all credit to the guys in Anguilla and the amazing staff in the FA because they appreciate obviously strength and conditioning can have a huge impact, and they're trying to do all of the right things in an environment which is, you know, you probably typically look at and go, oh, they've not got anything, and the equipment isn't there. You know, when I first sort of spoke to them on the first day and said, right, well, I had a good idea of obviously the backgrounds and things. Said, right, who has access to a gym for their players? And I think like one or two hands went up. And the rest of it was sort of, no, it's just all pitch based in terms of the S&C work we can do. So really, really interesting, but a fantastic week of work. So yeah, and looking forward to potentially going back next year as well.
I think it's easy for us to forget as well, especially in the UK, that like the positions that we're in, but when you start to look out worldwide as well, the actual opportunities that are out there, isn't it?
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think from us having the chat just before we hit record, like that's underlined by this opportunity in this trip, isn't it?
yeah, 100%. And I think for me, I think that the sort of take home message from it was that for us, a little can go a very, very long way in certain environments like that. And the way that we sort of structured the course for them was we gave them a taste of every level, really. You know, when I was showing and on slides and on the presentations each day and things, we were sort of saying, this is what, you know, we do in England, this is how we periodize, this is how, you know, we typically track players and monitor players, and we track load, and we're looking at, you know, high speed running days and certain themes that you have across the week and stuff. And I said, but very much appreciate this is a full-time environment, or this is a, you know, semi-pro environment that we're trying to do this sort of stuff. And yet for the majority, if not all of those, I think there's one person on the course who saw all their players 4 times a week. Everyone else, it was sort of 2, 3 times a week, including their match. So, you know, it was a proper part-time. The clubs are amateur as well. But again, they're trying to upskill the coaches so that they can really improve. There's very few in and around the Caribbean. There are no sort of professional teams. The best you get is sort of semi-professional, but the majority are amateur teams. But that doesn't mean that the passion and the desire for football in the Caribbean is any less. It's right up there. You know, it's sort of football and cricket, and had some great discussions about cricket as well while I was out there, which was great fun. But like I said, a little goes a long way. So the conversations were around, listen, this is what a full-time elite environment looks like in England, a professional club. And then it was, and this is what, you know, you can still achieve regardless of the equipment you've got, the contact time with your players, you know, just your skills and expertise as well in terms of your understanding, say, of like data handling or anything like this, right? These are the big rocks, if you want to call it that you can implement to players. And it was really, really nice actually, because we just scaled everything to, like I said, this is what the top level looks like, but this is what's achievable for you right now. And all pitch based, pretty much, like I said, but you could see the eyes opening a little bit with them, and you go, oh, actually, we can still do a lot of good work, even if it is just pitch based. And I flew out some like, you know, your big long resistance bands that you can do sort of banded axles and stuff like that with, as well as a bag of 20 just glute bands. and took them through so many things that you can do with that. I said literally like with a couple of bands, this is the sort of work you can get done, and you could just see that they were like, oh wow, like yeah, we can really have an impact. But so just little things which to us as English or British coaches in our environments, you think are the basics and are the given. Um, could have and will have a huge impact on regions like this around the world. And I think that's a really powerful message because just simple things like basically just structuring a warm up or a physical preparation session, going from sort of basic mobility work into activation into sort of like injury prevention work and then some sort of either some speed or some axle work or some plyos, half an hour session incorporating all of those things. Do that twice a week with your players, and they have that access and they have that passion to do that with the players. And they were like, "Wow, this is really going to impact and really going to benefit our players." And I came away with a fantastic buzz because you sort of, of sort of the 20 plus coaches that were on the course, you scale that to all the players they're now going to be working with, and all of a sudden you're thinking, actually, we've just impacted a lot of players there. And this is their first ever one. It's the first one. They didn't really know what to expect from it as well. So it's only going to get better as well, and hopefully only going to impact more players as well.
I think one of the first things you mentioned when, again, before we started recording, when I said how was it, was that appetite and that hunger for development and just the passion around S&C, which is always the best start, isn't it? That you've got a group like that in front of you, and then for them to I imagine there was quite a bit of bouncing ideas off each other once you'd open up the sort of brain pathway on. There's a lot of opportunity and things that you can do. So how was that in terms of like the networking side, the engagement between coaches?
Amazing. Like it's the only word I can use because we've got a WhatsApp group which we created for sort of during the course for comms, but then also to like put some of the material and stuff in there. And everyone is just so positive on it, and like it's going to stay open the WhatsApp group, and I'm going to sort of put more added resources on top of there and things that they can use and just really little simple things like I shared a lot of our YouTube channel, the Physical Performance Hub's YouTube channel, a lot of the videos on there with them in terms of just because they were there and they're really easy to access, but loads of the football fitness stuff and then and in terms of the podcast and sharing obviously the community and just showing and just it wasn't even like anything groundbreaking. It was all sometimes it was just pointing people in the right direction and where to find resources. Because as we very well know, YouTube and social media is a very confusing place, and there is a lot of bad information out there. So it was just sort of giving them the skills to filter through stuff, and again finding what's important to the players that they have. But it was amazing because as soon as there was a break in the day, or when we finished and wrapped up at the end of the day, fortunately I'd sort of scheduled in like an extra hour at the end of the day for like catch up questions and stuff. And after they were full days. We started at 9 and we finished at like typically around 6 o'clock. With a break for lunch for an hour, and then like a half an hour break in the morning, and maybe like a half hour break in the afternoon. So full on day, like properly full days. Lot like literally going between classroom pitch. It was pretty knackering. But every break in the day, I'd have a line of people asking questions on, oh, what about this? Can I do this? Can I do this? I've got this sort of environment or situation with players. What would you do? How can you do this? And it was just like it was sort of a hunger I've never really seen. Like most people listening to the podcast will have gone on coaching courses. They've either done sort of back in my day it was level 1, level 2, FA coaching courses. And then it became obviously like C license and stuff. But you will have been on some of these courses, or it might be the UKCA, it might be BASES, it might be a conference, it might be whatever. There's sort of qualifications that we go on. And the vibe that you always get a few on there who are, you call them a bit busy and they're trying to ask a few extra questions. But most people are sort of like, yeah, okay, cool, got the information, thank you, right, off we go a little bit, which isn't always a good thing, but nothing like that over there, like a line of questions. And on the final day, which was sort of the major first sort of assessment day, where every single candidate had to coach players, and we structured it so that their main sort of coaching they had to deliver was a speed-based session, an accel/deceleration session, and an agility-based session. And obviously got them prepared, got them sort of working together in groups, and eventually got them doing it by themselves. And the standard was incredibly high. And from people who haven't typically done these sorts of sessions before, um, but the hunger and the passion to learn showed that they picked up stuff very, very quickly. And on the back of it, so we structured it around typical sort of FA because again, a lot of heavy influence from the English FA and how the courses work, obviously with Anguillan's link with Britain and the UK. So it was a lot of sort of what went well, so the review and the reflection side, which we played very, very heavily on because I'm a big fan of, as I've said many times on the podcast, reflection is how we develop and how we grow. Sort of the structure that we broke it down to was what went well, even better if, and then what would you do next time on your reflection piece, which I know a lot of people will do similar processes or even use that exact language. And even after they filled that out, they were still trying to pick your brains in terms of, go on, so what else can I do and what else can I do? Because the hunger to learn was just so immense. And yeah, I got home drained every night because you were switched on like from the minute go. But then you just realize and you reflect, and there was a long old travel there to and from, but that travel gave me a brilliant time to reflect and go, actually, we've done something really special here. And something which is an opportunity completely out of the blue that you'd never think you'd do. Coaching strength and conditioning in a literal paradise. And the quality was right there, and it was just the passion and the desire from people, and then just the friendliness. I was so welcomed and accepted, and I was like, wow, what an absolute experience, and something which I don't think we sometimes see in this country. I think we take it for granted a little bit. I think because strength and conditioning, sports science, physical performance, it is a bit more established. Well, it's much more established in our country, and therefore it's almost like a given. We rest on our laurels a little bit. Yeah, this is what we do. Yeah, fine. And everyone likes to have a little moan about the schedule, and you moan about this. And then if I picked any of us up and dropped us in that environment, and then saw the passion to improve, and see what the facilities and things that they have over there in terms of the lack of equipment in comparison to what we would have in this country, and then you go, okay, actually, let's stop moaning, because people around the world have got very, very little, but they would almost more passionate than us to try and improve their players, you could argue. So yeah, very, very good experience. Very, very good experience.
I think a lot of it's underlining that the importance of having good people around you, though, as well, isn't it? Because you've obviously gone in and got the buzz from their energy and their passion, and I'm sure they did as well from yourself, but everyone else in the room. And obviously that's what we try and do with the events, is to bring people together. And that's why, isn't it? Because as soon as you get these conversations going, you realize that a lot of people are facing the same sort of challenges. But also having a short conversation with somebody, you can come away with so many different ideas. And a lot of it, they might not even tell you that much. It might just open up your own brain to opportunities and things that you could potentially put into a program. And it's just having that right environment to do that, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it also comes down to the environment was right for learning. Because like I said, we go on courses or we go on conferences and things, let's be honest, sometimes because we have to. Because of obviously the rules and regs in this country, there's a lot of tick boxes in terms of working in football now. As we know, we need certain accreditations, we need certain things for the right reasons. I won't badmouth it too much, but you also do get that element of, I'm here because I have to be a little bit. Again, you do pick up things, you do learn. I'm not badmouthing it that much, but there is that slight underlying tone to it. Whereas there, everyone was on the course because they absolutely flat out wanted to be, and they were from backgrounds that they didn't need to be on that course, but they wanted to, and they seen it and they went, oh wow, what an opportunity. This could be a brilliant opportunity to learn. Not, oh, I need to do this for my accreditation, I'm going to get on that. And do you see what I mean? So I think straight away the vibe and the buzz was just like everyone sort of switched the brain into to be a sponge mode, and then there's a few who were more experienced and were there sort of doing it because it was interesting and it was their sort of topic already. Like I said, there was some track and field people, and there were some football sort of performance coaches, but again, they were working part-time, so it was they were trying to upskill themselves even more. But like I said, we had sports therapists, medical staff, just general coaches, people who had done sort of physical education degrees and stuff, and this was just going to really nail it down. But by the time he came away, I had multiple people and multiple people on the course because of the link with the UK have studied in the UK. You know, they'll be Anguilla, but they've come across and studied in the UK and then gone back home, or slightly vice versa. But by the end of the course, we had really good conversations around sort of career steps and what to do next. Some who had done sort of undergrad degrees and were looking at masters, and some were even very aware of UKSCA and NSCA and the qualifications that you'd need to work in football and all this sort of stuff in this country. And loads of questions around that. And by the end of it, some of them saying, right, I'm really looking, I want to do a master. Like, this is sort of giving me that push to go into that direction. So you know, I don't know if it was from stuff I was saying, maybe I was making it sound too good, I don't know. But you know, you could see that, like I said, just that willingness to be on or in an environment to learn. It was just incredibly refreshing, and it felt very similar to the conference, obviously that we hosted this year, in that the people were there and they again switched their brains into sponge mode a little bit to just absorb as much information as possible. But I think what was so special about being in Anguilla and then in the Caribbean was that, you know, a lot of information as well, obviously, that was passed around on the conference, some real nuggets of information, but probably the ceiling or the level, the baseline level of understanding at the conference would have been very, very high already. As we know, there were some really experienced practitioners in that room. Whereas out in Anguilla, yes, there was a good level of understanding of the concepts, but it was the little nuances and the little ways in which you can still deliver some high quality strength and conditioning or some injury prevention work or some physical preparation work to players, even when you have no equipment on the side of a pitch, and how you can partner stuff, you know, partner people up and things like that. Stuff which again I think we take as a given. You know, if you said to pretty much any practitioner at any level, certainly, you know, in professional football, right, come up with a 20-minute injury prevention sort of physical preparation session, strength based, that's looking at targeting the major key areas for injury prevention and football. Yeah, I think people come up with some pretty good stuff. You know, even with no equipment. It was just allowing the people out there to sort of push them in a direction and go, have you considered this? Have you considered this? And just give them the framework. There's nothing more than that, really. Give them a framework to work off. And you could see that it was like latched onto. And then the direction which some of those people on the course took it was mega impressive. You know, some people sort of, obviously I gave them a few demos. Every day I would sort of deliver how to do a match day warm up, how to do certain sessions, how to, you know, coach agility and all the sort of coaching which we do and I've done through my career. And then when it was their turn to deliver, you could see they'd sort of latched onto the sort of phrases and stuff that I've been using or I've used throughout my career and was trying to pass on to them. But then the sort of framework of that session and then taking it in a completely new direction. And I took loads of ideas from it. Yeah. And they were going, oh, can I do this? And I was like, I hadn't even thought of that. Yeah, of course you can. That's a great idea, you know, and just little drills and things like this. So it was just a really positive, very good experience of just learning. And I think the sort of key take home message was that we in this country definitely take for granted the level of expertise that we have, the level of experience that we have. And I think also the environments which we work in. You know, we all love a moan over the schedule or, you know, the training ground not being quite up to standard or the gym's not quite good enough and things. And we love that because it's what we do as human beings. But it's almost like that reminder to check ourselves and check myself a little bit and go, and actually, you know, we've got it pretty darn good. And that there's a lot of people around the world that would kill to be in our environment. But also then on the flip side is then we need to put ourselves out there to help other regions and other areas to coach. So yeah, just a brilliant experience and one that we wanted to share really with everyone.
What was some of when they're sort of lining up after the sessions and stuff and the questions that are coming in, was there anything that was like repeated? Was there some questions where people were facing similar challenges, and what was the sort of outcome of those?
I think a lot of them which was really refreshing, was off the back of every session that the candidates did. Obviously, I was reviewing it as well with sort of the head of coach education and things out there, a fellow called Nigel Linton. Obviously, we were sort of assessing their delivery, like the classic level 1, level 2 Back in the day, FA coaching badges that we've all done, a C license now, and B license and stuff. And if you've done those as well. So we were going over what went well, even better if, what would you do next time? And they were giving us answers, we were giving that feedback. But then after that, they even wanted even more. Like, okay, so you gave me that even better if, you gave me that what went well, you've given me your feedback. What else? And that was slightly nice. I think as well because we've all got a bit of an ego, haven't we? And a lot of coaches sometimes, if you get that feedback and go, I see what you've done there, but probably not quite right, and here's the reasons why. You sort of take it on the chin, but you might bite your tongue a little bit. Some people might not, but some people would be like, okay, yeah, okay, fine. There's the criticism. I'll take it though. Yeah, constructive criticism. Thank you very much. Typically, we won't carry on. You won't dig deeper with that. You wouldn't then go, well, tell me more of why I was wrong, please. But pretty much everyone was really willing. Okay, I see why you said that. Yeah, I see where I've made that mistake. What else can I do? How else would I improve it? And things like this. And it was very simple things that we've all probably done before. Like people were put in one of the Axel, for example, quite a few people in when we were doing the acceleration and deceleration session, which was on the final day assessment. People were put in like a 10-meter or 15-meter backtrack in there. So they'd accel, decel out really hard, get the brakes on, do all the sort of shape, get into the right body shapes that we were trying to coach on the earlier days. And then they might do like a 15, meter backtrack, which typically, again, in football, we don't see movements like that. You would typically turn and obviously and go. So we were giving them that information and go, like, brilliant detail in the axle decel. However, you then put in a 15-meter backtrack to the next cone and then the next movement or the next action. And you frame it in that question is that real? Is that relevant to football-based movements? And then, oh, maybe not actually. And then you go, okay, there you go. So you think you made that point, and they go, okay, cool. And they go, okay, and what else? What else could I do? Like, and they carried on in terms of I want to know why. So that was definitely a recurring theme. Is just the almost the passion to improve was really, really strong. I think the main theme though was I see my players twice a week. I've got half an hour tops. What can I do? What can I do? I've only got a pitch. What can I do? But then what was really refreshing and something which I think the main question, it actually came from the head of coach education as well, Nigel, because obviously he would be dealing with it a lot, was the question which was, you've got a physical performance coach or S&C coach trying to do these sorts of the good things that we're talking about. Head coach doesn't agree with it. How do you deal with that relationship? How do you deal with those battles? And I chuckled when I said that is an ongoing battle that happens every day in football, and that is something which even in I don't like to say even in England or even in the UK, because it makes us sound like we're absolutely ahead of everything, but we're definitely not. But we're, in terms of development of S&C, we are obviously more than the Caribbean. But I was saying, even in our environments every day, in professional, full-time, elite environments, those battles still happen regularly. So that was interesting that, the battles we still have every day, people were still wanting to find out about that and ask those questions out there as well. So similar problems that they face that we face as well. So, lots of good questions. But I think the thing that really took me back was just the passion to improve. Like it was, like I said, it was a line of people. It was like you sort of expected, right, 6 p.m. We've been here since 9. Like if you want to, like that sort of does the delivery for the day. If you want to head off, please do. If you want to stay behind and sort of, I call it tutor support, 6 till 7 p.m. tutor support. Like any sort of more support work you need, please come. And sort of no one left. they just carried on. And I was like, oh wow, okay, cool. So yeah, it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool.
I think a lot of the stuff you're mentioning actually, it's nice with the timing, because Sam's podcast, he spoke a lot about, obviously it was a different sport in terms of preparing players for American football.
Yeah.
But a lot of his was working with the head coach, and one of his big lessons was within that American football environment, and also the nature of the game being very stop-start. He had a good relationship with the head coach where he could jump in and coach. But it was like a pre-agreed agreement in a way. They knew that was the case when they started, and they expected that from them. And I think that's what we've had with a lot of people on the podcast that have talked about that as being an issue, isn't it? That you have to kind of square that up before you go into your position and your role working with that person. What is my actual position and what do
Yeah,
you want from me?
yeah,
And I
yeah,
think that then it comes down to then if they cross that, you can refer back to, well, this is what you said originally. Well, it's a really interesting point, isn't it? And like you say, one that we've not mastered by any means, but
mm,
speaking to a lot of people now, there's a lot of different approaches, I suppose, and experiences with that type of challenge. Well, that is one of the one key takeaways is that just clear things up before you get going.
yeah, 100%. And I think as well, what's really exciting actually is if you think about one of the points that I made on the course out there, was that realistically, S&C is still an emerging resource, regardless of what level of the game, country, region, area of the world you're on.
Yeah.
Like football has been around a lot longer than S&C in football has. S&C has been around a long time, I get that, but S&C in football is relatively new in terms of in football. Um, for example, though, and this is where the difference is, obviously football in this country, in the UK, has been much more established for a lot longer at professional levels than it has in other areas of the world. So the Angolan Football Association, was formed in 1990, I believe it was. So, you think about when the English Football Association was associated together a lot longer ago.
Mm.
So in terms of where the game is growing in other areas of the world, if we're now trying to get S&C involved in the game early on, like it is, then it's very exciting to see where it can go.
Mm.
And I think as well, because of obviously in the Caribbean, like I say, track and field is huge. Like you drive around Anguilla and there's every day onto the way into the training ground, there was a massive poster of a sprinter who from the island who I think had done 100 meters in 9.8 or something, like ridiculous time, and like was clearly celebrated like the superstars, as we know, Usain Bolt in Jamaica, etc. The Caribbean track and field is huge. And off the back of that, obviously S&C and physical preparation, yes, it's slightly different in terms of sprinting, but it's understood.
Yeah.
So there's a bit more of a buy-in a little bit. And like I say, the journey of Caribbean football is most clubs are amateur. I don't know in terms of the bigger islands like Jamaica, but I believe they are more semi-professional, if anything, rather than full-time professional. But then when you go to the island, smaller islands like Anguilla, St. Kitts, etc., St. Lucia, they are amateur clubs.
Mm.
So the coach education side of things in all forms of the game, so all corners, we're talking technical coaching, S&C, even you look at your sort of your sort of medical sports therapy sort of courses as well. They will all be a lot newer to the football out there. And therefore, if we're getting S&C in at this stage, I think that's very exciting. Whereas obviously, UKSCA has come along or the S&C qualifications into British football has come in after football's very well established. But I think one thing that made me chuckle, and we will obviously in future episodes dive into a little bit more about S&C slash fitness slash physical qualifications in this country. The FA obviously used to do the Fitness Trainers Award, the FA Trainers Award back in the day. I can't remember how long ago now, 15 years ago or something like that,
Yeah.
maybe a bit longer. They obviously stopped it for a long time. And now we're getting the B license I think I can't remember the technical term, but B license in fitness or physical performance or whatever it might be. That's now emerging again. And sort of, I think it's only been out for a year or so, something like that. But a C license doesn't exist in this country. And it blew everyone's mind in Anguilla because they were saying, so do you deliver a lot of these courses? Do you deliver these in the UK? I was like, no, this doesn't exist in the UK.
Yeah.
And they were like, what?
Mm.
And it just gave me something. Now, obviously, we have our own institutions. We have the UKSCA, we have Bases, we have other institutions which sort of do that. And then the FA and the EFL and the Premier League and Audit, EPPP has used as the prerequisites and requirements for coaches working in England. But it just put a little interesting question in my mind of maybe we're not as ahead of the curve as we think, in that football associations around the world are launching C licenses in strength and conditioning, specifically for strength and conditioning, whereas if you go on a C license or a B license in this country, there's a little nod to the physical corner, the classic FA four corner model. There's a
Yeah.
little nod towards the physical, and they might sort of try and tell the technical coaches a little bit about periodization and sort of tapering and planning your week a little bit. But it's definitely not a full blown course on strength and conditioning. So just a little interesting question there to go, oh, yeah, okay, just keep that in mind, FA, and where we are in this country actually might not be as far ahead of the curve as we think we are sometimes.
Yeah, no, I think it's a fair point. John, what would be your wrap up message? I know you sort of talked around a lot of takeaways that you've taken from the trip, but especially speaking to coaches out there listening to this, what would be a sort of a take home message for them?
Ooh. I think, like I said, it ain't all that bad. It ain't all that bad in this country for one. The one thing that certainly stuck in my mind is I'm very fortunate that the start of my career certainly, and similar to yourself, we worked in environments where we had no equipment. We had you had a sports hall, Wigan, etc. I had a school, college gym, if I was lucky, or it was just a pitch and a pretty beat up old 3G in certain clubs I worked at and stuff like this. And that was it. You had half an hour. Like I always like to call them, sort of the water into wine rolls. You still got to keep players fit, still got to prepare them, but you've got nothing at your disposal. So if you have experience of coaching in those environments, not you're bulletproof, but you're almost like you just understand, you just get it. You're like, right, well, this is what I haven't got this, but we can do this. I haven't got this, but we can do this instead. And having that understanding, in my opinion, is crucial because football, you cannot just rely on the glitz and glam. Now, if you're in an environment like that every day, fantastic, you can. But there will be probably times where you can't rely on that. So that then allowed me to all the questions that were being asked to me out there. Well, what can I do? I've got no equipment. I was like, well, you can do this. They went, oh, well, I've got nothing. I've only got a pitch. You can still do this though, bodyweight exercise with a partner. Oh yeah, so you can. The classic example is like a Copenhagen bridge or a Copenhagen hold with a partner.
Yeah.
Getting your partner to sort of support inside of the knee and ankle and go up and hold into the Copenhagen. And that was like they were like, wow, amazing. And you're thinking that's something we probably everyone's probably done in this country for a long time. But we might do something fancy, something a bit more fancy for your adductors and your groins rather than just a Copenhagen partner hold. But same movement, same muscle group, similar sort of isometric based exercise, but you can do it with a partner with no facilities and literally just on the side of a pitch. So yeah, those skills are vital for us as coaches to be able to coach in environments where there are no fancy gadgets and gizmos. And I think as well, the final thing I'll say is I think we need to be prepared to reach out to other regions. The whole point of obviously Football Fitness Federation, the whole point of our community as S&C coaches, sports scientists, sports therapists, physical performance coaches, whatever you want to call us, that whole umbrella, like we grow when everyone else gets better. When we upskill ourselves, we upskill our industry. And that comes from sharing and collaboration, which is obviously what we were banging on about at the conference. And that extends outside of our borders, that extends outside of the UK. And obviously, we have a lot of foreign coaches involved in Football Fitness Federation based in different countries. But we as coaches could do a lot of good to a lot of players around the world, not just in our country and in Europe. We can go wider if we're prepared to reach out and put ourselves out there and share experiences like I just have and hopefully will be in the future again. So I think put yourself out there for sure and be prepared to learn, but also be humbled as well. Because one of the key coaching points, and I'll finish on this really to the coaches out there, because they were sort of saying they were asking the same thing, what key things you need to have as a coach. And one thing that I've always stuck with is be confident even when you're not. Like act almost like I said before, like coaching is acting. You are putting on an act. I said, be confident even when you're not, but do it with humility and be humble so that if you are wrong or if you do realize an opportunity to learn, you take it on the chin, you put your hand up and go, yeah, actually, yeah, okay, I'll take that on board.
Yeah.
And I think that hopefully transpires to the wider context of growing and improving the S&C community as well. So yeah, very, very good trip, very, very worthwhile. I would highly recommend people do look at opportunities like that. It massively opens your eyes and yeah, I've got a proper fire in the belly now to know that the more players and the more coaches we help, the better everyone gets. So yeah, very worthwhile.
Brilliant, mate. Well, this is exactly where I wanted to do this episode, wasn't it? As a bit of reflection. I know there was plenty of things that you took away from the trip, and hopefully the listeners have taken a lot from how you've described as well. So no, I appreciate you coming on, mate, as a guest. You are
Yes.
going to be back as co-host as well. We've got a few
Yeah.
episodes in the diary ready to go. So Jordan will be back joining me on the podcast as well. Big thank you to everyone for listening. And just final thing for me, go and check out the sponsors, Hydro, The Good Prep, and Hawking Dynamics. And we'll speak to you again in the next episode. Thanks, Jordan.
No worries. See you soon.